Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Technically Human. Technically Human is an ongoing series that talks about the most human aspects of managing technical people. This week, we have another awesome episode with Eric Gong, who's the founder of Eric Gong and Company, a recruiting service that helps tech companies hire and recruit their best talent. This week, we talk about a pretty serious topic. We talk about when folks leave, quit, resign from your team, and really the repercussions to the manager, how managers should think about handling that situation, how to learn, and some really good tips and tricks and tactics and strategies on how to get better and improve as a manager and to learn from that kind of experience. Eric goes deep into his own stories and really shares honestly about the ups and downs of management, especially when somebody decides to leave your team and your company. So enjoy. We'd love to hear any feedback you have from this episode. And yeah, sit back, relax, and let's get to it. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Technically Human. This is going to be a doozy, and I'm so excited. We have myself, David Cho, the co-founder of Stat, and we have Eric Gong here.
Hey, everybody. I'm here for the doozy.
Yeah, so our episode last week had quite a great feedback. I think it really resonated with people, and it was, for those that missed it, it was about red flags during interviews. It was just about the interview process in general and how to really think about understanding the motivation of somebody in the interview process, and I think it's stuck with a lot of folks, which I think is great. And this week we want to talk a little bit about something kind of similar, I guess, but more about quitting. And this is, pretty juicy topic. Everyone's heard the phrase, people don't quit, leave jobs, they leave managers. And that's really what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about experiences Eric has had from folks leaving his team. I want to talk about the lessons learned there. I think a lot of people have their quitting stories. I have my own quitting stories, but it's never really talked about from the standpoint of the manager. And I think that's something that people need to talk about. I think a lot of folks might feel a sense of maybe shame about people quitting their teams, or have a sense of maybe resentment or disappointment, or I'm sure it's a myriad of feelings, right? So I think it's something really interesting and important to talk about, and how to deal with folks leaving your team. Is it a you problem? Is it a company problem? Is it an employee problem? So I'm sure it's some, compilation of all those things. But Eric, I would love for us to dive into the topic of people quitting and leaving managers and not jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing that quote for quite some time now. And I'd say when I quit bad managers is because my manager sucks. And then
Mm-hmm.
when I realized I was the idiot, now I'm the idiot. I'd say it's a funny experience,
Mm.
right? Because we all quit managers and not jobs. I think that's really true. Yeah, I mean, like, you feel pretty dumb. Well, I felt dumb every single time someone quit on me. And I'd say like this topic hits particularly close to home.
Mm.
For me, I tended to, even though I never like lashed out at people or like blamed them for leaving me, it just like hits me a lot because
Mm.
I'd say, like, as a manager, I really, really care.
Right.
I care about people's futures. I care about them as individuals. And I gotta say, a lot of times it's pretty much unplanned, right? Like, even if
Mm.
you have the best relationship with someone, and they'll quit on you. So for
Right.
example, like, there's this guy that I had on my team. We had like the best relationship, right?
Mm.
And I, every one-on-one be like, hey, how you doing at the company? And yeah, are you happy and stuff like that. And the guy was like, yeah, I'm super happy. And then we used to have our one-on-ones like every 2 weeks. And then as we were hyperscaling, I literally was like running out of time. I have 15 like direct reports and like going to 20. And I was like, hey, like, where can I save some time? I was
Mm.
like, oh, this guy, I'll have one-on-ones with him every month because there's no way he's leaving. And so during the next one-on-one, I said, I feel like we're in a good spot. Like, we're a hyperscale this company, and why don't we do our one-on-ones every month. He was like, yeah, fine. And as we ended the one-on-one, I was like, hey, is there anything else you want to talk about? He's like, oh, I'm leaving the company.
Oh man.
So I'd say like those kind of like, and I'd imagine like the way that it hit me like a punch in the face. I'd imagine like for other engineering managers, it hits just as much. I'd
Yeah.
imagine. I don't know. I
Right.
don't walk in
Right.
anyone else's shoes, but
How did you deal with that? Like, what were your personal kind of obviously mental and emotional repercussions, but also from a company standpoint? Did it affect how you were viewed as a manager or your ability to retain a team? All those. I would
yeah,
love to get into the specifics
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. I gotta look up what the 7 stages of grief are because I literally, when
Yeah.
I was an early manager and the first guy quit on me, I was like raging on the inside, like, why am I an
Mm.
idiot? Why am I not a good manager? I
Mm-hmm.
ordered every book on Amazon and like started reading them. And I say, like, when I was very inexperienced, I had like no idea.
Mm.
Like, why would people quit on me? What could I do? And as I
Mm-hmm.
got my experience, like, I learned, right?
Sure.
Sometimes it's in my control, sometimes I'm not. I'd also say, that when people leave you, I mean, you look like shit as a manager, right? Like there's
Mm.
no way about it. Whether it was in your control or it's not, whether that guy was, that guy or gal was a good employee or not, it still reflects upon you. So
Right.
I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Like when
Mm-hmm.
when you're a manager and you can retain people is like great. But when you lose people, it's like it's it cuts deeply. And I'd say for me in engineering, it hurts a little bit more just because you will notice the effects a lot more in an
Mm.
organization from my perspective,
Right.
right? Because it's actually like stuff you're not building.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, could you, I don't know if it's, I'm sure it's hard to quantify, but are you able to say how much of the time it was they quit really because of you, because you were their manager versus some outside situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that so for this person in particular is about money. I mean, there are like a lot of discussions about it, and like I definitely tried as a manager. So I don't fault myself in this scenario
Mm-hmm.
for like losing this person, but I try to think how to have more honest and open relationships with my team so
Sure.
that when they're not happy, they could tell me, or when they feel like they want to leave, they could talk to me about it.
Sure.
Right. So I'd say in this instance, it was a growth moment for me because, hey, I think I have this relationship with someone where if he's unhappy, he could tell me and then we could like work it out rather than like you
Mm-hmm.
find out one day.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing I'd say in any kind of relationship. You find out one
Yeah.
day.
Getting blindsided.
Yeah, you feel blindsided, right? Like sometimes your employees feel blindsided by company decisions or whatever, but as a manager, you'll feel blindsided. So I'd say like I learned from that experience, and that experience helped me find tactical ways to build more meaningful relationships with my employees, such that when they are unhappy or they are thinking about these things, we talk about it.
I mean, it's interesting because it seems like, you did all the right things, having regular one on ones. Obviously you create a certain kind of culture on your team. And yet you are blindsided. Like, how do
Yeah.
you better prepare, or can you, or is that just
Yeah.
kind of the life of a manager?
No, you can, but I'd say like so like when you're a new manager, right? They tell you have these like do these routine things, right? Have one-on-ones and like have like candid feedback. But like when you become a better manager, I think the key is like you figure out how to have candid conversations with your team members. I think that's the key, right? Because if you just have a one-on-one and you say how you doing, the answer is gonna be I'm doing good. How are you?
Sure,
Right?
right.
Like
So it's
and
like a matter of asking the right questions during those kind of
yeah.
tactical meetings and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, now in my own company or when I did it before, I was like, hey, like, like, what's your happiness level here? Like,
Mm.
I mean, that's one question I like to ask, right? Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
what's your happiness level this week working here?
It's important that you ask that, but also that they're actually comfortable enough with you to answer honestly, right?
Yeah, that's a skill that you'll develop
Mm-hmm.
as a manager, like reading in between the lines.
Mm.
When someone's not happy and someone's not productive, you should know.
What are some signs that you've picked up?
Well, in a meeting, I could tell you like when I'm in a meeting with the team at a leadership level for managers and above, it's like, yeah, I'm listening to content. Like, yeah, I'm listening to, like, let's say we're at a stand up, right?
Mm,
We're a stand up meeting, has like all the stakeholders, all the engineers, and people talk about what they're doing. I'm actually not really listening to content. I'm trying to read in between the lines,
mm,
right? Which means like, where's this team struggling?
mm-hmm.
Where are people struggling? How can I help them, right? And like, what are people's mindsets in the
Yeah.
team?
Listening
Uh,
for frustrations, whether they're said or unsaid
Yeah,
explicitly.
yeah, because that's your job to unblock the team from
Mm-hmm.
like whatever. I mean, it could be tactical. It could be like, okay, like we don't have money for this tool, and then like you slap down some dollars, or it could be like conflict resolution, right? It could be how people talk to each other. Like when you notice people, when two people are communicating and there's friction there, like you got to be able to
Mm-hmm.
read it.
Yeah.
You develop this skill as a manager because if you don't pick it up, it's gonna blindside you. People are gonna leave you, and you gotta
Right.
have no idea, right? It's gotta be too
Yeah.
late.
Can you talk a little bit more about, earlier you said that when people do leave you, it does kind of leave an impression, a negative impression on you as a manager. Do you have any advice for people that are maybe experiencing this for the first time on how to pick up the pieces when this happens after an employee leaves?
Get over yourself. Probably number one, it's like it's such an ego hit. And I'd imagine for like newer managers, it's just like it gotta feel like world ending. It's like
Yeah.
it's almost like it's a breakup.
Mm,
It's like you're dating someone and it's a breakup and you gotta face that person every day until they leave
yeah.
and people just gonna talk about it and you just have this like in your minds this thing that people talk about and I'm just talking about it from the perspective of someone new.
Mm-hmm.
When you become more experienced, it's like, okay, like you get punched in the face, you feel like shit, and then you need to be able to handle it with strategy, tactics, and decorum,
Mm. Can you talk
right?
about those three things
Yeah.
separately?
So, okay, like Bob quits on you. You could do one of two things. You say, Bob was a fucking idiot, anyways. He sucked as a programmer. Good
Mm-hmm.
riddance. How
Mm-hmm.
does that reflect on you as a leader?
Yeah.
So whenever someone quits, unless they literally like set fire to the code base or like did some malicious, you give them a grand exit, right?
Mm.
Say like, hey, like, so I got used to doing it, and at a Monday morning meeting, I say like, hey team, I have something that I want to share that it's unfortunate, but Bob has decided to move on
Mm-hmm.
from ABC Widget Company. Bob has done an amazing job here and like highlight Bob's
Mm.
accomplishments,
Mm-hmm.
right? And say something positive about Bob and let Bob have a grand exit from the company. So, like in the beginning, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I'm just mad at Bob for
Right.
quitting. Like, I don't know. I don't like to think myself as egotistical, but it does hurt your ego, right? Like, it
Yeah.
does make you wonder about yourself as a manager. But like, you need to get really tactical about it. Like, like learn from it. Like, like what can you learn from this situation? Is it you as a leader? Get feedback, right? Like, what did you do? Or do you create a toxic environment? Do you create an environment that someone cannot thrive in? Did you not look out for someone's career? Is there something
Mm.
that you could have done, or there's nothing that you could have done, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a learning lesson, and then
And is
also,
that like
yeah,
you set out separate time to have that conversation, ask those questions with the person leaving?
yeah. So I think it's a very gentle situation,
Mm-hmm.
but like obviously, like when someone resigns, like you could, I mean, that might not be a bad time to do it then and there, to be honest.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if it's not appropriate time, you ask for permission. Say,
Yeah.
hey, like Bob, I understand you want to leave, and whatever you think is right for you, I fully support. Is it
Mm.
okay if we talk about it?
Right.
In certain situations, maybe it's just like a bad situation. Maybe you
Yeah.
and Bob had been fighting, or maybe
Yeah.
if it blindsides you, then you will want to learn from it. And trust me, well, I can't speak for anyone else, but there's been so many times in my career where I heard stuff about me that I was like, wait, what?
Really?
And there's always like I like to say that like when you're in management, you deal with stuff fair and unfair.
Mm,
So regardless of what Bob says that is fair or unfair, learn from it.
interesting.
When people quit on you, other people are gonna be like, "Oh, someone left Bob's team. Bob must not be a good manager." Is that fair? I mean, or Eric's team,
Yeah.
right? Or David's team.
Right.
Hey, someone quit on you. Like I'm in engineering, and then someone quit on you, right? Your direct report quit on you. What goes through my mind, fair or not, is like, hey, David's not a good manager. And then a second person quits on you. It's like, oh, is David a good manager? Is that fair or unfair? Probably pretty unfair, right?
Right.
Like people are
Right.
leaving you. I'm just judging you. So I'd say like whatever feedback like Bob gives you, like however unfair it may sound, write it down and try to learn from it.
Mm,
Because in the moment, you're probably like, oh, this person's an idiot.
yeah.
Maybe.
Do you
Like
have
that's
any
yeah.
examples of that, like unfair feedback you've received in those times of people resigning?
So a couple episodes ago, I told you like a guy was or a person was singing in the office and told me that
Mm-hmm.
I did not support them in
Yeah.
this situation. I felt that that was unfair at the time. And then I just kind of took myself out of the equation of like, was it fair or unfair? And just try to learn from it. And I didn't label it as like fair or unfair. It's like, what can I learn from it? How can I do better the next time? And I guarantee you, in my opinion, it's like in any given situation, that situation could have been handled better.
Mm,
I don't care how you handle it. Even if you handle it like the best politician in the world, you could have handled it better. Like even in the situation where like someone did something that was like bad for the team, like they just walked out and they came back. There was a level of justification where I was like, oh, I gotta tell this person
yeah.
that what they're doing is bad for the team. Like my tone could have been better. Maybe my
Mm,
tone was so aggressive, this person was like, oh, fuck you.
mm,
So in my mind, it's like I felt like the quitting was unfair to the team and me, but I could have handled it better. So I think there's a learning lesson. So I felt like
totally.
that was unfair. There were times where, and I'm one of those bosses that really care about someone's careers. And like sometimes people like quit and they're like, oh, like I wish like you could have grown me more at the company.
What did they expect? I feel like that's very common. That's a very common thing people say and want. What do you
Yeah.
think? Like, because you're someone that cares, that is actively
Yeah.
trying to grow someone's career,
Yeah.
and yet the person on the other side feels like you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
What is it that they really want? You think?
It could be unreasonable and unfair. That's not on you.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the reality. And that's your
Yeah.
job as a manager is to understand what people like really understand a person. Or you could go on to your one-on-ones and say, how you doing? And then here, I'm good. How are you?
Mm.
I don't ask that dumb question anymore
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're going to get sidetracked. But everyone, I guarantee you, they want a great career. They want more money,
Yep.
right? They want a happy workplace. Who doesn't want that? Will what they want match what you can offer? Maybe not, but it's your job to really know, like to understand where they are, right? That's how I feel about one-on-ones.
Mm-hmm.
Other managers might be like, all right, just report what you're doing to me, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And that they could run their org the way that they want. But I think like a really good manager understands their reports, where they are mentally, where they are like in their career, what they want, right? And how they can make them the most productive. It might be
Yeah.
unfair, man. I
Yeah.
guarantee you want to run a really big company today, people are going to quit on you for things that you're out of your control.
Totally.
Reason,
Going
yeah.
back to one thing you said before, you said strategy, tactics, and decorum. I want to hear more about what you mean by decorum in terms of reacting
Yeah.
to someone's
Yeah,
resignation.
yeah. So it's exactly what I mentioned, right? Like give someone a grand exit.
Okay. I thought there
So
was
the
something
guy
else
who
to
was
it.
just like, all right, like I'm out because you told me I can't accolades. I'm out. I was pretty mad, but when we announced it Monday morning, I was like, "Hey, this guy's awesome. He kicked ass in his work. and we want to be thankful for that until this person leaves.
Yeah.
Because if you talk shit in any way, shape, or form, and
Mm,
you show vitriol, the people there, they pick up on that.
totally. What about kind of managing up? As a manager, someone leaves. What advice do you have for kind of, the directors or the VPs of engineering above you and how they might perceive you or your team
Yeah.
or how to handle that kind of dynamic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'd say that I think the thing that could benefit a manager the most is to be tactical and not come up with excuses like, hey, like this person was not a good engineer anyways, and we'll like be fine without them.
Right.
Right. Like that's not very good.
Yeah.
But saying like, hey, upper management or person that I report to, I know it's a bummer that, he or she left, but here's the plan so
Mm.
that we can go on without this person, and then provide a plan
Yeah.
and make the
How
plan
do you
happen.
typically structure those plans?
Yeah, I just say like, well, what did this person, in my mind is like, well, what did this person do? Right. So like, let's say they were an engineer, and I'd say, well, now that this person is leaving in 2 weeks, here's the plan such that we could bring in someone just as good, if not better. Right. And then
Where
you have,
in that, yeah, where in that process is there like kind of like, like you were suggesting people basically do like a retro on the relationship, right? After the person leaves, where does that kind of happen with leadership or like the type of people we hire or like where do you make those suggestions to the change in recruiting based on the learnings of someone's resignation?
yeah, I mean, you need to have your own one-on-ones with your own leader, and suggest changes that need to be made. Right. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, it's like if everyone's leaving because of money, you should make it a point to let
Mm,
your organization know. And there's been times when I was in an organization, my boss wasn't listening enough, or my boss couldn't do what it takes. So I actually asked for a meeting with my boss and my boss's boss and HR to talk about salaries, right?
oh
Sometimes
wow.
you really have to, and not put it in like any kind of like super negative way, like, hey, my boss is
Mm-hmm.
not doing their job, so we need more
Mm-hmm.
people. But I'd say like it's how you frame it, right? So it's a little bit of politics. So like, hey, boss, like we had some people leave this year, kind of, and it's not great for us hitting our goals. I have an idea that I want to share, and I think it would benefit to have like the chief whatever officer in this NHR so that we can all align. Can we do
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Right. So I think like when there are gaps like that, you can't say like, hey, you're not doing a good job, boss, getting
Mm,
people raises. Like you gotta play a little politics.
totally.
So for managers, they're gonna figure out how to have those conversations within the organization.
Yeah, man, the life of a manager, it's rough. It's pretty rough in terms of kind of dealing with all these things that you get not a lot of credence for, or no one's really like patting you on the back, but this is like the hard work. Getting that kind of a meeting scheduled and booked and ready to go and advocating your team. I mean, that's hard. So,
I'd say
dang.
that like that's like the curse of management, right?
Yeah.
Like when things go well, your team did it. When things go to shit, like it's your ass on the line. And it always really is. So like when like people ask me about management, I say like it's a people game,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
really gotta love the people aspect of it and not the money aspect of it.
Right. No, I think this has been yet another incredible episode of Technically Human. And really, like, there's so many takeaways here about tactics, like the grand exit. I think that's something people can do right away. Relationship retro. I'll pull other things out that we talked about, but I think it was great. So thank you for sharing so candidly, as always, about your experiences. I know these aren't easy topics by any means, and glad we're talking about them.
Yeah, well, it's always a pleasure, and hopefully this helps the audience. So if it does, let us know, and we'll do more of these. Right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, please give us some feedback and hit us up across our socials. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. Cool. Thanks,
All
David.
right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.